Your future self is infrastructure. This is how you will build yourself so completely that your life becomes proof of your philosophy. It was on June 29th, 2026, which is earlier this week. I woke up and did what I have been training myself to do for quite a while now. I went outside, I got sunlight, I moved my body, I gave my nervous system a chance to wake up before I handed my mind over to the world. So that may sound simple, but simple is not actually small. The way you start your day determines what gets first access to your attention. Most people wake up and immediately grab their phone. Before prayer, before breath, before movement, before sunlight, before thought, before themselves. They let the world enter their nervous system before they have even entered their own body. And I understand this. The phone is easy. The notification is, believe me, I know it's easy. The feed is easy. Pleasure is easy. Looking at social media is easy. But not all pleasure is harmless. Some pleasure restores you. Some pleasure weakens you. Some pleasure gives you relief. Some pleasure quietly trains you against your higher self. That's the pleasure you need to watch out for. That's the danger. So that morning, June 29th, before I let the outside world enter, I tried to give myself a better beginning. Sunlight, movement, a clean state. Then my brother texted me, and I looked at the text message, and he says, "Sucks what happens to Chris Johnson." And at first, I did not fully process that. I didn't text him back right away. I just kind of ignored the text message for a second, and then I started seeing notifications on YouTube, ESPN, NFL. When I started going on social media throughout the day, I started seeing that. Well, it wasn't really throughout the day. It was later on that morning. I saw that Chris Johnson, actually on YouTube, I saw that he was on Good Morning America, and he revealed that he has ALS. And if you don't know Chris Johnson, just YouTube Chris Johnson. He's known as CJ2K, and he is known as one of the most explosive athletes I have ever watched. I mean, he's a man whose body looks like pure speed made out of flesh. Like, that's just how electrifying and fast and exciting this guy is to watch. He rushed for how you got his name CJ2K was he rushed for 2006 yards in one NFL season. And not only that, he was the only, in that same season, he was the only player to ever have 2,500 yards from scrimmage. So this is a man whose gift was just speed, pure acceleration, force, rhythm, timing, violence, grace, and escape on the field. So, but then he reveals that he has ALS, which was really shocking to me, to fans, the whole entire NFL universe, the former players, athlete, because he's the last person that you will think who has ALS. It's really so hard to process, and it's really hard to really even think about. So for a moment, everything stopped when I saw this. I was just like, what the heck? And I dropped in tears. Like, I started crying because, I mean, Chris Johnson was never like really my favorite player, but he was really a very exciting player to watch. Like, you would want to watch him. And and it was nothing I had against him when he wasn't my favorite player. I just pick and chose who I wanted my favorite players to be. But I would not have no problem him being my favorite player. I mean, if he's anybody's favorite player, he definitely should be. His that season was historic. His career is legendary. He definitely is, in my book, I say is a Hall of Famer. I don't know if he's first ballot, but he's definitely a Hall of Famer. I mean, the only player to ever have 2,500 yards from scrimmage, that is ridiculous. So there is something uniquely brutal about watching a body that once symbolized motion become attacked at the level of motion itself. ALS does not simply attack strength. It attacks the command system, the motor neurons, the communication between brain, spinal cord, nerves, and muscle, the machinery that makes voluntary movement possible. A man can have discipline, a man can have money, a man can have fame, a man can have a beautiful wife, a man can have genetics that once looked unfair. And still, biology can remind him that the body is not owned. It is stewarded. That realization hit me hard. Not as a doctor, not as an expert, not as someone pretending to know the exact cause of his disease, but as a student, as a writer, As someone studying anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, massage, movement, medicine, AI, biology, chemistry, physics, and the future of human health. And I know this, the existence of incurable disease should not make us passive. I did not look at that news and think only that is sad. I looked at it and thought, this is why the work matters. This is why health matters. This is why science matters. This is why creativity matters. This is why technology matters. This is why learning matters. This is why the future self cannot remain a motivational idea. The future self must become infrastructure. The future self is not discovered. Most people talk about the future self like it is something waiting for them. Like one day after enough time passes, a better version will appear. More disciplined, more focused, the more wealthy version, the more peaceful version, the more powerful version, a more useful version. But the future self, like I said, is not discovered. It is constructed, built, trained, studied, measured, corrected, sharpened, fed, protected, and tested against reality. The future self is not a fantasy you imagine when life feels uncomfortable. As a matter of fact, I shouldn't say fantasy because I think I think fantasizing is actually, there's nothing wrong with fantasizing. I would say the future self is not a delusion. It's not an illusion of you fooling yourself when life feels uncomfortable. It is not a vision board. It is not an aesthetic. It is not a quote. It is infrastructure. A body that can endure. A mind that can think. A nervous system that can regulate. A spirit that can remain rooted. A skill stack that can produce value. A financial system that can create options. A philosophy that can survive pressure. A mission strong enough to organize your life. That is infrastructure. That is the future self. That is everything that molds into the future self. Your higher self. The question is not, what do I want to become? No, the deeper question is, what must be built in me so that becoming becomes inevitable? This is something you should know. The body is not separate from the mission. Going back to Chris Johnson, CJ2K's diagnosis made me think about the body differently. It did. Not emotionally, structurally. The body is not just the thing you live in. The body is the first business, the first nation, the first temple, the first machine, the first ecosystem, the first technology. Your blood is a river of life. It carries oxygen, nutrients, hormones, immune cells, waste, heat, information, and chemistry throughout the entire body. Your cells are not motivational speakers. They are needy workers. They need supply. They need energy. They need oxygen. They need the correct chemical environment. They need homeostasis. And when homeostasis is disrupted, disease begins to enter the conversation. When homeostasis ends completely, life ends. That is why health cannot be reduced to abs, supplements, or gym selfies. Health is infrastructure. Energy is infrastructure. Sleep is infrastructure. Blood pressure is infrastructure. Blood glucose is infrastructure. Blood pH is infrastructure. Movement is infrastructure. Breathing is infrastructure. The nervous system is infrastructure. The future you are trying to build will demand a body capable of carrying it. A weak body taxes the mission. A tired body taxes the mind. A dysregulated nervous system taxes judgment. Poor energy taxes discipline. Poor health raises the cost of everything. This is the economic law underneath health. If your body is inefficient, every ambition becomes more expensive. You may still move, you may still work, you may still create, but the cost rises. The same action requires more force. The same decision takes more energy. The same discipline produces less return. This is why the body matters, not for vanity, for capacity. Your body is the operating system through which your purpose must run. The physics of capacity, in physics, you do not get more energy out of a system than what is put into it. There are losses, heat loss, friction, resistance, inefficiency, leakage. No system gives perfect output without cost. The same is true in life. You cannot endlessly withdraw from a body, mind, spirit, and nervous system you refuse to invest in. You cannot run on bad sleep, poor food, cheap dopamine, emotional chaos, weak discipline, and scattered attention and expect elite output. There will be losses. There will be drag. There will be friction. There will be decay. The person you are trying to become is not built by ignoring those losses. That person is built by studying them. Where is energy leaking? Where is attention leaking? Where is money leaking? Where is lust leaking? Where is fear leaking? Where is comfort leaking? Where is confusion leaking? Where is ego leaking? This is why personal evolution must become scientific, not cold, not soulless, scientific. Measure, gather, record. Measure, gather, record. Observe, document, correct, repeat. I'll say that again. Scientific, measure, gather, record, observe, document, correct, repeat. The world becomes your lab. Your body becomes data. Your habits become signals. Your failures become feedback. Your emotions become information. Your urges become diagnostic material. Your life becomes something you can study instead of something you simply react to. That is the difference between drifting and building. The drifter feels, the builder measures. The drifter reacts, the builder studies. The drifter becomes what happens to him. The builder uses what happens to him. The builder, again, I'll say this again. I have to repeat some of this stuff because I'm actually talking to myself, and you know, I'm not only talking to you. I'm literally talking to myself here. So the builder uses what happens to him. The world is your laboratory. So I am becoming more convinced that the serious person must become a scientist of his own life. Not because he wears a lab coat or whatever, but because he refuses to live a life unexamined. A scientist does not merely experience effects. A scientist asks, what caused this? What changed? What repeated? What variable moved? What did the system do underneath pressure? What happens when input changed? What pattern keeps returning? This is how I want to live. If I read a word I do not understand, I will stop reading. I will stop reading and I will just write it down. I learn the meaning, I will learn the pronunciation, and I will study how it is used. I ask where it came from. I ask how it connects to medicine, economics, theology, philosophy, anatomy, writing, in life. The word this week was utterance. It was not just speech, not just sound, utterance. Utterance is expression leaving the invisible and entering the world. A thought becomes spoken. A belief becomes audible. An inner reality becomes external. That matters because if you cannot speak clearly, you cannot teach clearly. If you cannot teach clearly, you cannot lead ideas clearly. If you cannot express what you see, your vision remains trapped inside you. This is why language matters. This is why vocabulary matters. Not so you can decorate sentences with big words, but so you can see more precisely. Words are not just tools of communication. Words are tools of perception. A limited vocabulary does not only limit speech. It can limit what you are able to notice. That is why I am adding Latin and Greek to my system. Not as an intellectual costume or to make it look like I'm smart or whatever. As root work. Anatomy is full of Latin and Greek. Medicine is full of Latin and Greek. I told you all that I'm going to school I was going to go to school to be a chiropractor. Right now I'm in neuromuscular therapy school, but I changed my mind recently and I decided not to do chiropractor. I decided to actually pursue actual medicine school, DO school. I will get further into that why later. But medicine is full of Greek and Latin and Greek. And when I was studying this, I'm like, To find a connection as a synthesizer, as a polymath, I should teach myself Latin and Greek. I'm already studying anatomy in medicine. I already study. I'm already studying sometimes law, but really anatomy and medicine. When you look at Latin anatomy and medicine, you will see that a lot of those words, all those terms, they're rooted with Latin or Greek. So theology, philosophy, law, rhetoric, and science are all shaped by root languages. To study roots is to study the bones underneath language. And if language is how thought becomes visible, then root language gives you access to deeper thought. This is not random study, this is infrastructure. Again, education is not the same as formation. This is where I keep seeing the same problem. People are educated but not formed, credentialed but not integrated, specialized but not whole. They know their lane but not themselves. They can repeat the language of a field but cannot think beyond its walls. They can pass exams but cannot ask better questions. They can work inside a system but cannot imagine how the system could evolve. That is dangerous because disease evolves, technology evolves, market evolve, bodies evolve, cultures evolve. But many minds remain trapped inside the boundaries of what they were trained to repeat. This is not an attack on education. Believe me, I'm not attacking the education system. I want more education. But I want deeper education. I want the highest levels of training I can access. But education must become formation. Information must become judgment. Study must become method. Knowledge must become usefulness. This is how it should be taught. That is why my conversation with the physician that I have this week. This was such a decorated week this week, but it mattered a lot when I had this conversation with this physician. I shared my direction with him to a certain extent. Massage therapy, chiropractic, Axis, and Axis. If you all don't know, if you've been watching my videos, Axis is the optimized medical health business that I am building, where I will start off with my newsletters on what I had already started my newsletters on Access newsletters on Substack, which you can subscribe to, and you can subscribe to Access. It's called the Loop Access on Instagram, and I will start off with building it as an educational medicine and health system, where you can get access to all sorts of information that deals with health, medicine, and even technology integrated into health and medicine, the medical field, off the Axis brand. And the services that I'll start off offering will be massage therapy, and then I was thinking chiropractic. But I went but it's much more deeper than that. That's how I'm starting off. The desire to build a company around human optimization, around body intelligence, research, medicine, technology, AI, robotics, and disease prevention. And the physician, he listened when I talked to him about this. He mentioned DL school, a school that may fit the vision of better than chiropractor school, because medical school will give me access to a wider world. Doctors, researchers, labs, systems, clinical knowledge, scientific infrastructure, a deeper field of collaboration. That this mattered because I am not chasing titles. I am building proof until the titles become obvious. If the mission requires deeper medical infrastructure, then the path must be considered. That path must be considered. Not because a title saves me, not because a credential makes me whole, but because the right institution can become leverage when the mission is serious enough. That is the economic law. The future self requires investment, time, money, discomfort, study, sacrifice, delay, opportunity cost. Every path costs something. Everything comes with a cost. Not choosing also costs something. So the question is not what is easy. The question is, what does the mission require? The mission must organize the skill stack. This is where people misunderstand ambition. They see many interests and call it scattered. And sometimes they are right. Many interests with no governing mission become chaos. But many disciplines under one mission become infrastructure. Writing, medicine, anatomy, kinesiology, massage, AI, robotics, economics, physics, chemistry, biology, pathology, philosophy, psychology, digital marketing, film, acting, martial arts, Latin, Greek. Those are not random when they are organized under one purpose. The purpose is personal evolution, health, energy, wealth, money, sovereignty, all under my five pillars. Axis becomes the body intelligence layer. Growth becomes the nutrition and supplementation layer. Biogenesis becomes the human optimization and research layer. AI becomes the leverage layer. Writing becomes the doctrine layer. Media becomes the distribution layer. Medicine becomes the authority and clinical layer. Martial arts becomes the embodiment layer. Faith becomes the root. The problem is not doing many things. The problem is doing many things with no center. A scattered man collects interests. A serious man integrates disciplines. That is the difference. Nothing in me gets abandoned. Everything gets disciplined, sequenced, and turned into fuel. Building empires. This is how you build empires without becoming a prisoner. There is a warning here. Building is not salvation. Money is not salvation. Business is not salvation. Titles are not salvation. Status is not salvation. Even health is not salvation. You can build the body and still be empty. You can build the business and still be lost. You can stack trophies and still lack peace. You can chase millions and still be broken inside. You can build an empire and become a prisoner inside it. That is why the soul must remain above the system. Money should expand life. Power should increase usefulness. Ambition should make you more alive, not more hollow. If money removes pressure, but not emptiness, the hunger is deeper than income. If success gives you options, but not peace, the issue is deeper than achievement. If building more makes you less present, less loving, less honest, less rooted, and less human, then the empire has become a cage. This is where I need Jesus, a God, not as decoration, not as branding, as the anchor. Because the future self cannot only be powerful, he must be ordered, he must be truthful, he must be useful. He must be governed by something higher than appetite, ego, lust, applause, money, or control. Otherwise, all that power becomes another sophisticated form of slavery. Build empires, but do not become a prisoner inside them. The future self is a weapon. A weapon is not only something used to destroy. A weapon is something sharpened for a purpose. The future self is a weapon, not against people, but against drift, against disease, against weakness, against confusion, against poverty, against lust that weakens focus, against ignorance that disguises itself as certainty, against comfort that slowly lowers standards, against systems that keep people passive, against the old identity that wants to stay familiar. This is why sunlight matters. This is why anatomy matters. This is why writing matters. This is why learning matters. This is why asking better questions matters. This is why studying disease matters. This is why DO school, medical school matters. This is why AI matters. This is why building matters. This is why prayer matters. Small tools become large weapons when they are placed inside a serious mission. A flashcard is not just a flashcard, it is memory training, it is repetition, it is identity reinforcement, it is a way to return the mind to what matters. A word is not just a word, it is a door. A lecture is not just a lecture, it is raw material. A body is not just a body, it is the instrument. A business is not just a business. It is value organized into structure. A letter is not just a letter. It is doctrine under construction. Personal evolution. Personal evolution. This is what I mean by personal evolution. Not motivation, not self-help, not pretending everything is fine. Personal evolution is the deliberate construction of a human being under pressure. I'll say that again. Personal evolution is the deliberate construction of a human being under pressure. It is the decision to not leave your mind untrained, to not leave your body neglected, to not leave your language shallow, to not leave your money random, to not leave your attention exposed, to not leave your faith decorative, to not leave your future self theatrical. The future self must become infrastructure. You build him into the day, into the schedule, into the study, into the food, into the workout, into the prayer, into the writing, into the business, into the questions, into the corrections, into the research, into the way you respond when into the way you respond when you fall short. Because you will fall short. You will miss. You will drift. You will get distracted. You will feel temptation. You will feel fatigue. You will lose rhythm. But the serious person does not collapse into identity every time he misses. He returns. He studies the miss. He lowers the cost. He lowers the cost of correction. He builds a stronger system. That is how the future self becomes real. Not through one dramatic transformation, through repeated construction. Chris Johnson's diagnosis reminded me that the body is sacred infrastructure. The nervous system is sacred infrastructure. Movement is sacred infrastructure. Speech is sacred infrastructure. Health is sacred infrastructure. Time is sacred infrastructure. And none of it should be wasted. I don't know what causes ALS. I don't know what will cure ALS. I do not pretend to know what science has not solved. But I will say this again. The existence of incurable disease should not make us humans passive. It should make us more serious, more creative, more disciplined, more interdisciplinary, more willing to ask uncomfortable questions, more willing to build, more willing to combine medicine, technology, AI, research, nutrition, movement, physiology, philosophy, psychology, and faith into a new systems of possibility. The world does not need more passive intelligence. It needs formed people, integrated people, useful people, people who study deeply, build seriously, think across fields, measure reality, speak clearly, move with purpose, and refuse to let their gifts stay undeveloped. The future self is not discovered, it is constructed. And I am building mine as infrastructure. Body, mind, spirit, skill, money, mission, language, faith, science, creation. Not to look impressive, to become useful, to become capable, to become harder to break, to build myself so completely that my life becomes proof of my philosophy. And so that's all I have right now. I thank you all so much for watching, and this was a very heartfelt letter that I had to write. And shout out to my dog Chris Johnson. Thank you for making my childhood so entertaining. And you're a tough person. You are a fighter. You are even more inspiring than ever before. I think the whole world is listening. I think you got some wake up calls, man. And I'm just thinking that I gotta do better myself, because just because we don't have the answers right now don't mean we never will have the answers. And maybe this is the whole point. This is the whole part of life. This is the whole point of being self-reliant, resilient, concentrated, curious. And for us to work together as human beings across this planet and use all of our minds, our intelligence, to synthesize and connect the dots and to build useful things, technology, products to elevate us as human beings. That's my personal evolution. That's my purpose. That's what I'm doing. That's what I want. That's what I care about. That's what I think about every single day throughout the entire day. That's what I go to sleep with. That's what I wake up with on my mind. That is my goal. That is why I do every single thing. From the day I wake up to the day I go lay down. I mean, to the day I wake up till I lay down, to the day I die. That is my purpose. I am just going to keep molding, refining, reiterating. Don't want to get too emotional, but I thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Prayers for my boy Chris Johnson, CJ2K. I'll see you very, very soon.